like to welcome everyone to the Culture of Agriculture, sponsored by Spudnik Equipment. I'm Brent Rigby. I'll be your host today, and I'm with Matt Bender, which is one of our engineers. You want to tell us a little bit how long you've been with the company?
Yeah.
A little bit of what you're doing right now, because I know you're with the belt planters and also with the sugar beet harvesters.
Yep. Yeah, those are my two main projects at the moment. So I've been with Spudnik since 2017, spring of 2017. I started right out of school, found Spudnik was hiring, and moved to Blackfoot, Idaho, and I've loved every minute of it. So, my two main projects, I've got lots of other ones, but my two main ones right now are the belt planters, and then the 3120 sugar beet harvester. They're both pretty fun.
They are, and you've done a very good job of it
Well,
too.
thanks.
So we're gonna jump in and learn a little bit about that, but also you farm a little bit too. You and your dad.
Yeah. If I would have stayed in California, I would have been a fifth generation almond farmer. But I moved up here out of school, and my dad followed me. So now I help at nights and weekends, and when he needs me, hay, wheat, and corn up here. So
Well, we're excited to have you.
yeah.
Well, let's jump into the belt planter a little bit.
Okay.
What year was it that you started to design? Of course, we've had cut planters. That's been kind of our flagship for planting, and we have done really well with the cut planter. It's been very accurate. With that Grimmy row unit, we have done really good with that planter as far as placement and durability.
I helped with the folding one, the 12-row planter. I helped a little bit on that one when that started, right? That was before the belt planters. We did the 12-row folding. I helped a little bit with that project. So I think was it 2019? We did our first belt planter.
I was thinking the one that we put in the field, you started engineering, but the one we put in the field, this would be 24, 23, 22. 2022 is when we had the first one in the field down in Grace.
That's all irrelevant, right? Yes.
So, but you were engineering a year and a half or so before that. What spurred, because Grimmy has had a belt planter. And we just really haven't jumped into the belt planting over here, because I think what was their key to that belt planter from Grimmy? More for whole seed.
Correct. Yeah, it can handle a wide variety of seed, right? So I think there's less cut seed.
Over in Europe.
Yep.
Yes.
And so this one can handle oblong, fingerlings, to golf ball, perfect seed. And so it's more versatile. You don't have to cut seed with it. It can handle cut seed, right? We've proven that.
Yes.
But I think that's the bigger draw to it.
And I think one of the things with planting, we have a window that we want to always hit with planting. That window sometimes is narrower than others.
Yes.
But if we can get that planting window to be where the soil temperature is right and Mother Nature's ready to go, I think this was one of the things that we were looking at with this belt planter, is that we could speed up.
Yeah, you can plant faster with it. So the Grimma machine, they offer a 2, maybe a 3, and then a 4-row, and that's as big as they go. So our thought was, we developed the 8-row first, right, for our larger fields. So really it was just designing a new frame and putting our style hopper on top of it, right? The row unit's the same, but just designing around it.
So in that hopper design, obviously Grimmy has more of the gravity feed.
Yep, tilt bunker.
And we're the chain feed, like what we've done with our planters. And that's that sets us a little bit apart from the Grimmy planter comparatively. There's pluses and minuses on there. But,
definitely, yeah.
But with that feed, we seem to have a pretty consistent feed.
Yeah, the feedback I've gotten, the like with our chain system with individual hoppers above each row is that the seed stays sorted better, right? It stays mixed. You don't get the larger pieces gravitating to certain row units. And Grimma actually has to compensate for that by adjusting how each one plants based on the size of potatoes. So they actually have a motor on every drive, and they can adjust that, where we've been able to stick with 2 motors on the outside, and you split drive the machine to save on oil consumption, because 8 rows is oil intensive, right? And we've been able to do that because the seed kind of stays sorted better, right? It stays mixed better. You get a better
So maybe let's explain for our listeners that.
Yeah, back up. We kind of got.
We're
down
going to
a
back
rabbit
up.
hole. Yeah.
But this will help. Let's explain a little bit the operation compared to the cup planter. Obviously, the cup planter, we've got the cups on the belts. We're feeding it into a seed bowl that those cups are picking up the seed.
Yep. Then you have to shake out doubles. You hope you don't shake out your seed piece. Yes, and then the seed comes up and drops in the ground, right? And you have 2 cups that drop in kind of staggered, right? You have to get them to the center.
Correct.
The belt planter, so same chain that feeds, and then the unit has we call it the green belt, right? 'Cause it's green, but it's a belt that runs backwards towards the axle on the machine, and it drops into what we consider the seed bowl for the belt planter. And then in that area, there's a series of, I think it's 6 bands that form a trough, and you can control the shape of that trough for your seed size. But you basically just get a single file line of potatoes down those bands, and then a foam roller is at the end, and it acts as a brake, and that's what singulates and drops the potatoes. And then any return pieces get returned on belts, which sets us apart from our competitor that has a belt planter. Or band planters are typically what they're called. We call ours a belt because of those return belts that run backwards to the bands. So when your doubles, when your seed's knocked off, when you get that singulation, those belts, the competitors are bands, the belts return that back to get singulated again, right? And so truthfully, it is a skip-free machine when it's dialed in because you just get a single file line of potatoes. If your flow is happy and you have that single file line, you get slight variance, right? It's not that tape measure perfect.
Because of the size of the seed, correct?
Yep. The size of the seed kind of spaces itself.
Yep.
But you're never, the cup when it comes around can be empty, right? And you're truly missing a seed piece. But this one, when dialed in, it's just a single file line of potatoes. And we've planted upwards to 7-8 miles an hour, right? Up in Manitoba.
Yes. And we don't do that with the belt or a cup planter.
Not well, right? It can.
We can, but as what happens is you're basically juggling that seed as you're coming through and trying to hold it on those cups at that speed.
Yep.
Which is a difficult thing to do.
Yep.
To get accuracy.
Yep. So that's where the speed can come into play, right?
So if we have a 12-inch spacing on a cup planter compared to a belt planter, we're still shooting for that 12-inch. But maybe explain a little bit how we're shooting for a little bit of spacing, but also how we calibrate this machine, because it's a little different than a cup planter.
It is, and it's all about how those potatoes lay in the bands there, right? How they singulate, and so kind of if you're starting up a belt planter, you would lay out instead of just going and grabbing a piece and measuring, right? That gets you close. You would actually just kind of lay up, like maybe we say 10 pieces in a row, put a tape measure across that, and then average that, and that's how they're going to lay in the bands. And then you punch that into the display, you start planting, and we have a mode that we're watching every seed piece drop. And this kind of gets us to our weight control mode, which I'm sure you're getting to, right? But we're seeing every seed piece drop. So another benefit of this planter, it's up a little bit higher off the ground, but because there's no moving cups coming around, we know that when something passes by our beam sensor, that's a seed piece. So we can better keep track of every piece going in the ground, where before the cups would cause interference, right? And you didn't know if you're getting a double or a cup or a potato piece. So we're seeing every piece go. So our programmer, he knows based on your speed and what spacing you're after, when we should be seeing a seed piece dropping. Then, depending on what he's seeing, you can either run in, we're calling it basic mode, where it just, what you put in, it just stays locked into. Or you can let it adjust a little bit, and it's a slowly over time. You can choose the aggressiveness, but it'll adjust what it thinks it should be seeing dropping to achieve that, what you're after, right?
On that space.
And that's just all how the seed ends up laying in the bands, right? Let's say you grabbed a section of the pile that was cut bigger, right, or has bigger pieces. Over time, over 12 planter loads or however many planter loads in a field, it'll average itself out better, so that your population is what you want in that field, right?
Correct.
So at the end of the day, everyone wants a certain population to the acre. That's how they get their spacing. This machine, you can just feed in that population to the acre and let it do its thing, and it figures that out for you.
And it kind of goes back to what we've been kind of seeing in the corn, soybeans, all that. They talk about seed count per acre, and that's very important, because if we have that seed count per acre, obviously our yields and our quality and the different things that we're trying to achieve are
Yep.
going to be there.
Yep.
Whereas and even though the cut planter still is very good,
Mhm.
but when it does make a skip, if you're on a 12-inch spacing, you've gone to 24.
You have.
And if
And
you
it
go to a
can't-
third one, you
Yes.
go
And
to
it can't
36.
recover that. You might
Nope.
have seed left over at the end of the field. The belt planter, with that variation you see, right, just because of how the seed's laying and the size of the potatoes, bigger potato takes up more space in the bands. It's going to have more room next to it. We see, if you're at 12-inch spacing, we see, 14 to 10 inches, right? It's not a not a true skip, right? Not a 24-inch spacing. The planter is going to adjust for that, so you still end up with your seed per acre, right? You won't have as much left over, and then you don't get that true skip, right? So it's a kind of a double benefit, right?
Double
because it adjusts
'Cause I would
based on how they're
say
laying,
it-
it gets you what you want per acre.
Yeah, and as we've dug, as you go dig and kind of look at that, we have seen some spacing on some of the, like a larger piece to a smaller piece. We've seen up to 20 inches, I think, but on the average, you're either a little tighter or a little wider.
Yep. Yeah, the goal is that not true double what you're after, right? That skip.
And so traditionally, as a grower, we've been so used to that cut planter that's what we go out and we uncover the rows and we measure the seed. This one's a little different. We still do that, and we're finding that with some of the first year we probably weren't. We were still learning.
Yes, definitely.
Second year we got a little better, and in this third year, I think with the weight and with the seed size and all that, we have dialed in a lot better to where we're closer to what you're seeing in the ground. But the interesting part is we're actually showing how many sacks or how many pounds of seed we're putting on.
Yep. Yeah, we've gotten a couple growers that have been with us over the last 4 years, right, of development, and they've given feedback on what they want to see on the stats side, and how they want to interact with the machine. And then we've learned, as we've had some other growers get them, we're now better equipped to kind of show them how to dial the machine in, right? That's where the learning curve has been. It's performed well from the get-go when given the right conditions, right?
Correct.
Not overfilling that planter, making sure it is level. There are some tweaking to get that unit performing better, and then when it does, it's great. And you see that spacing in the ground. And I would say that when we've, by math, checked what the system is showing you to the acre and pounds to the acre, it's been right on.
It's been
right?
on.
So yeah.
And that's what's been exciting is what we saw last spring on that part.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about the design of the hopper as well, because I know the design on the hopper is a little different than the design on the hopper of the cut planter.
Yeah, so really simply, right, a cup unit is very vertical, right? The seed goes up and down. That's how the cups perform. So you imagine the belt planter is a cup unit, but flat, and that's how it just drops to the ground. It takes up more depth in the machine, right? And so I did stretch the hopper out since I had frame there. So it's one section of that hook chain for a cup planter. There's 2 of them in my hopper. So the hopper is deeper, but then I didn't have to go as tall. So it is a lower profile, easier to fill on the back. Capacities are, because of the depth, you can make a better pile in there. So I'd say a traditional 6, an 80-60 or an 80-80, my hopper holds a little bit more, depending on how it's piled.
How they pile it in there.
Yep. But then it's still the same valve and motor on the back and hook chain with the flight to add the seed forward. One feature that I've added for this year's machines, and I'll do some retrofit kits, is an adjustable gate on the end, because the flow of potatoes is much more important to this system, right?
Yes.
And because it can handle a variety of things, that flow is going to be different when you go to bigger potatoes or cut seed or small minis.
Well,
so you can adjust that.
You probably remember the first one we had down there running down in Grace, and we looked over there and we had a seed piece because we were trying to plant whatever came in on that seed lot, and we didn't sort it at all. We just
it was
put
unsorted.
And we had a potato that was getting filed down with the chain because it couldn't get through the hole that we normally have for the cut planter.
Yes, so we opened up the hole, and then when you put small potatoes in, you want to close that up. So now it has an adjustable gate on it. That first year we planted there was a seed piece that I wanted to take home and eat for dinner, right? It was
Yep.
because we just want to see what it would do, right? And
Yes. And it planted, other than getting through the hole.
yes, yeah,
Of course, and we made the comment we probably haven't had that experience yet until we did that,
yeah,
because the seed was either cut or sized out.
yep, yep.
But that's the neat part about this planter, is it does adjust with seed size, to where your smaller seed's going to be closer together, and your larger seed's going to be further apart.
Yep.
But kind of going back to the bin part, you've got scales on the bin as well.
Yes, and we do have scales on our 8060 and 8040 planters as well. The designer over those has incorporated them. On the belt planter, they actually play a function too, right? So on the cup planters, it's just showing you a weight in the hopper, right?
Yep.
So you can know if you're getting empty, right, or need a fill. On the belt planter, we actually have a a weight control mode, plant by weight mode, and you can punch in, I want this many sacks to the acre, and it initially runs off of the auto adjust to hit a spacing that's going to achieve that. But then the weight control mode watches how much weight is leaving the hopper and adjusts slowly, very slowly, more than the spacing one, over time, so that you do hit that sacks to the acre. And we also have an acres to run out with that too. So you can see how many acres you have left in your hopper to know to go refill, or if you're getting to the end of the field, you're going to change seed, you can adjust to run out by that time, so you're not filling buckets and scooping seed, right?
So yeah, it makes it really nice to be able to manage that part of it. Because I think a lot of times we load the planters, and by the end of the field, we've got some stuff that we got to get rid of. I think that was another part of the goal with this planter too, was to actually plant the sacks per acre that we're after. I think a lot of times when we look back, and I know even with my experience, you order seed, you order X amount of hundredweight, so that you're planting the X amount of acres, and we always had seed left over. And I think that a lot of us find that is that you have 2 or 3 truckloads of seed left over, whereas we should have planted it. It's not in the ground.
Yeah,
to grow.
because you're fertilizing the ground. You want to get stuff in the ground, right? And seed's expensive.
Yes, and so that was one of the goals that we had there, as well as speeding up.
Yes.
So from the very first planter to what we are producing today, what are some of the major changes that we have seen?
It could be a big list if you talk all the production changes. The frame has gotten simpler to produce as we have new capabilities in our shop, right? The tube laser is every engineer's dream, right?
Yeah.
To design with a tube laser, so that it's incorporated some of that new manufacturing technology, where you've got laser cut tubes in place of bent rails, so you're stronger and you're lighter in your frame. The adjustable gate on the hopper is a big feature. This year we are using a different type of load cell. On the 8-row, we found a more robust load cell. We're still using Greentronics controls. We like how they interface with our CCI system. You can get to all the controls. You can diagnose and see the weight all on our display, right? You don't have to have 2 displays. It feeds right into our screen. But the more robust load cell allows for some different frame features. We offer a taller, skinnier rear tire,
Which made quite a difference in the steering.
Yeah.
We saw.
Yep. It held that row pretty good. It's a more of a ag tire, and it's skinnier, right? Taller, skinnier, with an ag tread instead of our normal grader tire that goes in the planters for the capacity. And then really the other options are just the standard planter options, right? The toolbars that have been added after year 1, right?
Yep. And it's what we found too is it seems like that front toolbar is very key for our depth, especially with speed.
Yeah.
Because that shoe will tend to ride up.
Yep. But that
if
front
we have
toolbar.
Speed. So that front toolbar with the shank, makes quite a difference to keep that
shoe happier. Yep.
Where
we have since year 1, we offer on the belt planters a narrower shoe for that higher speed, right? So you're not throwing the dirt as far to have to recapture it with the covering disc. This machine has the individual spring style covering discs and not our standard setup, just because that's right where the seed is dropping through. So you have to have the split arms. That design has changed a little bit from year one. This year we're using the different hub on that one, the 4-bolt more robust hub.
Because with the speed, and that's another interesting part. We talk about speed, so it's interesting. We've had a smaller tractor on, say, an 8-row, and maybe this is a good spot. What configurations do we have in this? We have an 8-row, a 6-row, and a 4-row.
Yep, we are making a 4-row this year.
That's going to be a hang-on.
Yep, semi-mount 4-row that's going to North Carolina.
And so,
Yep.
And the row spacings.
Yeah, this one can go 30, 32, 34, 36. And then the 4-row, we designed in a 38-inch because they're on.
Yep.
So
we've got a good array of options on row spacing and how many rows you want. But it's interesting, as we've kind of learned, is if you took a 6-row planter that we normally are used to and pull it at 3.5 mile an hour, it doesn't take a huge tractor. As soon as you put that same planter and you double that speed, we found it takes a little bit more horsepower to pull that, doesn't it? So like an 8-row, we're pulling that 8-row with a 250 to 270 horse tractor. We found we needed a 350 to 370 horse tractor because we doubled that speed, which in turn it takes more horsepower with that speed.
Especially when you go drag it across the lava rock that's in Grace that first year, right? We wanted to see what would happen at speed.
That's right.
And we found some good lava rock piles.
Another part, you brought up the taller tires. We talk about slopes when you get on some steep side slopes. How does this machine act in that type of condition?
Yeah, so the unit itself needs to stay pretty level so that the seed flow is happy. So we have our Hill Pro planter. This one is a mini version of that, in that the unit levels, the hopper is fixed, the shoes are fixed, just the unit itself stays level, plus or minus 6 degrees for forward or back slopes, right, in line. The side to side is still kind of a challenge for this machine. We're still working on ways, because it is
because of how that seed is coming down in.
Yep, how it's coming down. So we're still working on that a little bit to help with that.
So I guess recommendation, for guys that are listening to this and kind of looking at their operation, if they've got some really steep side hills right now, we're probably.
Last year in Manitoba, they planted on some steep stuff, and we're still happy with it. They added some deflectors, right, to help with that. I think the recommendation from Grima was any side hill over 5 degrees, don't. But
we saw that a little different up there.
Yeah, there was
and
that
with
one
those
picture.
Skinny,
it was a good.
And with those skinny, taller tires too, they held that side hill way better than we did with our standard tires.
Yeah, it seemed like it kind of, they dug into the ground and held a bit better than the bigger, greater tires that kind of float on the surface a bit more, right?
Yep. So that's a good option if you're looking at side hill type stuff. That's
just for the planter to hold. Yeah, it held its line great. The seed, this unit is a little bit higher off the ground than a cut planter, so
that's where it drops.
Yep.
And you lowered that after our first year. We actually had it a little higher, and we have lowered that as much as you could.
Yeah, the tricky part is there's a covering disc down there, right? So you can't,
Yep.
because it needs to swing to stay level. You can't drag that tail end in the dirt. You shouldn't. Drag it in the dirt.
Well, and the other interesting part, if we talk about speed, obviously you're going to get seed roll as we speed up. The interesting part that I noticed anyway with this is it seemed like the faster we planted, the less roll as far as in the bottom, because the dirt was covering that seed faster.
Yeah, soil flow is tricky, right? The farmer in Alberta that wanted the narrower shoe design, he felt that helped his roll because you're moving less soil, so it can pinch on that seed piece quicker. I think just in general, if you're going faster, you're going to cover it back up faster too, right? With those covering discs right behind there.
Correct. And I think the other thing a little bit with that is this belt planter, and you mentioned it earlier, it's dropping it right in the middle.
Yep.
Whereas our cut planters, where we have the two, they're offset.
Yep.
And so that does make it nice to get it right down in that furrow, other than if you're on a side hill.
Yes. Yep.
You'll
Yep.
have some deflection there.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what, maybe talk a little bit about stand after we saw it come up.
Yeah, you were in the field more than I was. I moved on to other projects, right? After we were in the field when it was running.
But the feedback that we have had has been good.
Yes.
We haven't been worse than the cut planter, and in some aspects probably better as far as the seed being placed in the soil.
Yep. Yeah, I think our marketing guys have gone out and drone video, and the fields look awesome. All the feedback from the agronomists were awesome. Even when the machine wasn't pulling great, right? The big one up in Manitoba this last year, right? If it had other issues, the agronomist was still happy with what it was doing in the ground, right?
Yes.
He learned to trust it this year.
Well, and I feel like the year before we were still learning how to set the machine. I mean, and that's when you put a prototype out in the field, you're going to learn quite a bit of information over the next year or two.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're finally to that point where we're producing, because we have learned that.
Yeah.
But it seems like this year we were able to set that machine with obviously our average seed size, our weight, average weight, and then putting it through the auto after we get going.
Yeah.
It looked to me like we did better than the year before even, because that was what the agronomist was saying up there. And I think that's why he had that comfort level.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. Especially in the field with the cut planter, and then you could see it side by side better. I mean, every one that we've worked with on the prototyping has wanted the next year's version.
Yes, because of those changes.
The changes, and they like it, right? They're seeing the benefit. People in Minnesota, Manitoba, and Alberta, right?
Right now we're running. We've got some in Minnesota, 2 there, one in
Wisconsin, a bunch in Manitoba, a bunch more going up there this year.
Yep.
We'll have
And
more in Idaho this year.
one in Idaho and and we had a couple up in Alberta, right?
Yep.
So that's what we had this last year.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep. And this year we're making 19, 6
Yes.
and 8 rows.
and we had
And
some
the 2
really
4
good
rows.
feedback on that.
Mhm.
So
Yep. And like I said, every customer that got one last year wanted one again, right?
yes. So, but it is definitely, I mean, in the tradition of what we've been used to, I go back to that. I already talked a little bit about it, but in the tradition of actually seeing how that cut planter works compared to this belt planter, it takes a minute to get your mind wrapped around how that's going to look in the ground for you.
Yes. Yeah. And it really comes down to no skips, right? The speed is nice to plant in that window, right? That good growing window. So that's big. Getting the seed in the ground when you can. You can do it with fewer tractors, right? A 6-row belt planter can do what maybe an 8-row cup one could, right? I've not done the math on the speed and acres per mile, right, or per hour.
But you are correct.
But really, it's you're watering the ground, you're fertilizing the ground. You want a seed piece in the ground, right? So, yes, the perfect potato is tape measure perfect spacing. What we found is even the cut planter is not tape measure perfect unless you really slow down. So it's all a trade-off, right?
It is.
On manpower, time, and
Well, and you talk about speed comparatively. The farm up in Manitoba had 2 8-rows cups, and then we had the one 10-row belt.
yeah, it was a 10-row.
Because they're on 32-inch. And the interesting part that we saw there is that it could cover a half a pivot in the same time or quicker than the 2 8-rows because of the speed that we were seeing.
Yep.
And I think they were averaging around 6.5.
Yeah, I think they
tried
got it up to 8 because they had an RX on it, right? So they could.
But I think the bigger challenge there was the steering. It seemed like you had to have the steering set for either the real fast speed.
Yep.
And
I think their fertilizer rate
Yes,
too, right? They needed
yep.
different nozzles to go faster, so they kind of just were happy at 6 miles an hour.
Yes, it just was there.
Yep. And the customer in Wisconsin that got one, he planted really tiny potatoes.
Yes.
And he was used to 1 mile an hour. He went up to 3 with the belt planter and was tickled that he
Yeah.
got that out of it, right?
We 3 times the speed.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and it did
looked
a great
good.
job.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, the feedback we got was really good there.
Yep. And it helped them because this was a wet spring, so they were able to get in and get done when they probably wouldn't have at 1 mile an hour with
they'd had a struggle getting
the
there.
cup. Yep.
And I think that's probably something. That's why we've kind of looked at this is is getting it into a window. Maybe not necessarily cutting a planter out, but being able to, I think the one up in Alberta made the comment, he says, I now don't have to worry if I've got a window that I have to hit because I can get those in. He says, before I was nervous because even though I had a couple of planters, I still couldn't get that in time. But I think that's one of the parts with seed. That begins everything. I mean, that's pretty much sets your crop of what it's going to be, what it's going to yield. The whole 9 yards is set when you put that seed in the ground.
Yep.
And if you do it right and you don't stress it, you're going to have a better crop.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and the stands have shown that, right?
Yeah.
The plants look good. They're emerging
yes.
more similar, right? Because you're getting them in the ground quicker, so the field is more uniform, right? You don't
Yep.
get such a stagger.
So no, that's well, we're excited about it. We did play with a different cup design here a few years ago, and kind of ended up on the belt. We were kind of running the belt and that. What do you call that? Kind of the.
It was a belt also, right? But a different.
It kind of
type of belt.
The encapsulated the seed as the cup come up through, so it didn't lose it.
Yeah, and it tried to stay in line, right? It wasn't a staggered thing. They kind of folded over. But even it was still kind of after this tape measure perfect, and you're still trying to scoop it, right? So you're still limited by
You're still juggling it
profile.
through there.
It still had some of the initial limitations.
Yep. And we
to
didn't
this
see
one.
we didn't see a major change in speed on that part.
I think they went a little bit faster.
They did.
I wasn't
But
sure.
not with the belt.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. They got a little speed, but not. So that's why we kind of went towards the belt side
Because you get
from what we
speed
were seeing.
plus versatility, right? It can handle the year one, right? Unsorted, just go plant potatoes, and it did.
Yep.
The field average was what it wanted, right? The big ones got more space. The little ones were tighter. But yeah, if you sort your seed and you have that perfect seed, this thing can fly, right? I think in Europe they plant faster than we do.
Yeah, because they do use a cut seed. That's probably a lot of people listening. Probably cut seed is maybe a little bit more challenging with the belts.
More challenging to dial in. The cut seed, since it is cut, and depending on how it lays in those bands, sometimes it wants to lay like a whole potato, sometimes it doesn't. So it, again, the planter will accommodate that. It'll average itself out for your field to get the sacks to the acre that you're after, right? The count that you're after. But it is trickier to dial in. One of the benefits though with ours over a competitor band planter is theirs can't handle cut seed because it is all bands, and then the slivers, everything
They go back underneath those little rubber bands.
Yep. The return bands can't handle the cut seed, but the belts on this one
They can.
handle it.
'Cause
And the benefit too with our hopper that we have over a European style, we have the chains, and we have a trough underneath that catches the slivers, and we feed them out and behind so they don't get in there and they don't plug up the bands as much. When you're just doing a dump hopper, you get everything in there.
And it tries to pick it all up.
Yep, that was what the customer in North Carolina was excited for on this one.
Yes.
Was that sliver chute and the return belts instead of return bands.
Correct. Yes. Any as far as looking into the future? I mean, we're excited about this product. We're seeing some pretty positive results. I think we're going to continue to see positive results and probably learn a little bit maybe on making a few changes still.
Yep.
What do you see in the next 1, 2, 3 years of what we're going to see in this belt planter?
Yeah, so there is a bed version of this unit that is kind of 3-in-1, one frame for 3, and it's, I forget the number, I think it's like a 12-inch row spacing.
12 or 14, something
Yep,
like that.
yeah, something like that.
Yep.
So you can get, we had one drawn up. If you saw the concept I put together, it was like 18 rows
I saw
on
that, yes.
on a pretty big frame.
Yep.
But you could start covering a lot of.
But that's one of the
beds.
challenges with a bed planter right now is we're usually straddling 144 inches or whatever that bed configuration is. And so you're kind of limited to like a 4-row planter with a bed in it. So if we can get this concept going, it's going to.
Yeah, there are some
exciting.
options there, right? I think the
Yeah.
one that we might be nicer is for me to design, especially, is the 9 rows in a 6-row frame, right? So that you get 3 bed units stacked in there. It's a pretty compact machine, but you can
Get that.
Yep. So that might be in the future because the unit's already there. Just again, designing the hopper and the frame around it. I've heard a folding one kind of tossed around, right? So then the 10 row that went up to Manitoba, it was pretty big to move around, right? Even 10 on 32-inch row spacing, it was pretty big. So if you're going to plant that many rows, which you'd love to do, you need to fold up a little bit better for bridges and roads and public safety probably. So folding might be in the future. Maybe some different stuff with electronics, right? You and I on our trip back from Manitoba, we talked about seed mapping, right?
Yes.
Now that we're seeing every seed piece, how can you map it? That's more the software guy's challenge to figure out than mechanical.
But that's an exciting feature that we can look at now because it does make it so that you're seeing every seed piece and you can take that, put it into a map.
Yep. We had the customer in Minnesota with the Greentronics weight system on it. As long as you set it for every field, you can get a report for that field, and it'll show you what that planter planted. Right now, it's just weight to the acre, right? You can see what you put out in that field. But the Greentronics system will report that. But it'd be cool to add the mapping, like the corn, the sugar beet planters,
See
right?
the
They
skip
can
and
map
all
it.
that kind of stuff if we've got it, and then be able to kind of verify that.
Yeah.
Because I think, it's been interesting as I've gone out, and you've been with me a couple of times. We've gone out and dug, and obviously you find a seed piece, and you go, "Oh my word, we skipped." After a couple of weeks, and you dig in there, and it's a rotten seed piece. It actually never did materialize. So it would be nice to know, even on that map, you could say, "Oh, we had seed there."
Yeah. What happened, right? What was the cause of it, and go.
It gives us some tools that we can make some management decisions and make sure that we're doing what we need to.
Yeah, water's a big topic, right? So you can figure out your water management based on what you planted to the acre, and it's more visual, right, than just a number on a screen.
Yes.
You can see it and plan your fertilizer around that, right?
Yep.
Too.
Well, any closing ideas? Obviously, we're excited about the beet harvester too. We've made some changes there.
Yeah,
Maybe
we'll have to do a beet harvester podcast.
We'll do another podcast on the beet harvester.
Yeah.
But today, as far as planting coming up, I mean, we're starting to plan that right now. We just got harvest done, but
Yep. We're about, I think next week, maybe the week after, they start and weld the 4 and the 6 rows. So we'll have one in our show this January. We'll have a 6-row up in the show, and then the 4 rows are going to North Carolina. They'll probably be planting.
Oh yes, they're going to be planting in February.
Or we're still cold up here.
Yes, indeed.
And after this, I need to go back upstairs and keep working on the 8-row. That releases soon too.
That is true. Well, and we'll put a plug in here real quick. Our big show in January is January 21st, and we'd like to invite everybody to come and join us, see this planter on the floor.
Yep, this planter and some other
walk around
prototypes.
it. Yeah, and we're going to have a lot of neat equipment there, and you'll be there to answer some questions. I'll be there. Come and walk around this equipment and ask us some questions and enjoy the day too. So we'll invite you for, again, January 21st. So, well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Appreciate the information. I know it's kind of nice to maybe slow down for a minute. Harvest is over finally.
Yeah.
We got the beets in. The potatoes are all put away, and now we just got to get ready for next year. Start planning for that. So.
Yep.
Well, everybody, enjoy your week. I'm glad that you're able to join us, and we appreciate your patronage and all that as well for here at Spudnik. We wish you a good week and a good holiday, and we'll sign off for now.